I'm Isabel Stainsby, and I'm reading from Who's at Large in the Larder by Kristina Nesvedová. Suddenly they heard a sharp whisper behind them. You little monsters! I've caught you now. You wanted to sneak in without paying, did you? Pippa and Robeet were grabbed by a hairy brown hand, each from one side. So let's go, you rascals, hissed the coconut. Pine, grab that other one. Spud didn't even manage to move before the broad paw of a large pineapple with a colourful Mohican crest landed on the nape of his neck. The circus manager led Pippa and Robeet backstage, and Pine, his expression peaceful, swaggered slowly behind him. He'd thrown Spud over his shoulder like a sack. When they arrived at the dressing rooms, the coconut opened the door of an empty cage, whose inhabitants had just gone into the ring, and forced Pippa and Robeet to crawl inside. Shove him in there, Pine, he commanded. Pine only smiled absently for a moment, but when the circus manager repeated his order, he thrust Spud into the cage with his friends. The coconut shut the door behind them and secured the hasp with a lock. Well, you rogues, you're not sitting so pretty now, are you? The ringmasters will see you when they're ready, he hissed, and departed between the shawls. Pine waved at them good-naturedly, then sauntered off after him. Oh dear. They weren't going to get out of this one. Yet the plan had been working so well. Spud was the most despondent. He felt that it was all his fault. How they got in had been his idea. And now they were shut up in a cage and could expect a terrible punishment. Pippa and Robeet only looked guiltily at each other and didn't want to talk. They could hear the music from the ring, where all the performers were evidently preparing for the final act. Soon they heard thunderous applause. The performance was over, and the spectators were clapping hard enough to bring the big top down. More and more waves of enthusiastic appreciation. And then the circus manager reappeared, with Pine at his heels. He headed directly for the cage, unlocked the padlock, and opened the little door. Out you come, you scamps! We're going to see the ringmasters. The friends climbed out of the cage, and one glance at the enormous Pine was enough to make them forget about resisting. Obediently, they followed the coconut into the next room, where they stood in line, crestfallen, and hung their heads, and waited for what would come. Then they heard two cheerful voices. Well, I think that the show was an enormous success. What's your opinion, Mr. Director, sir? I would say that we smashed it. We absolutely smashed it, Mr. Director, sir. Rather. The audience absolutely adored us, don't you think, Mr. Director, sir? What? Well, as you ask, Mr. Director, sir, rather. I'd say we had them eating from our hands. Into the ringmaster's office came two strange little men, smiling and bantering, and high-spiritedly slapping each other on the back. They were both wearing a red ringmaster's jacket with a great many golden buttons, and white-pleated trousers, and high black boots. When Spud looked at them more closely, he remembered the pictures in Grandpa Runyon's atlas, and realized that they were two chili peppers. They both had dark red skin, but otherwise they couldn't have been more different. One of them was small with a pot belly, and the other had a swaying, gangly, skinny body, and hid a long curved stalk under his top hat. When they saw the wrongdoers standing in line, they instantly stopped their horseplay and put on serious expressions. So, what do we have here, Mr. Chanel? Asked the smaller one. I caught these scoundrels red-handed, backstage, Mr. Ringmaster. They sneaked in without paying, replied the coconut. Without paying, said the smaller ringmaster, gazing at the anguished trio. Then, looking extremely stern, he turned to his taller colleague. And what are we going to do with them, Mr. Director, sir? The beanpole bent over towards them and stared at them for a moment. Then he replied menacingly, I would have them soundly thrashed and sent to bed without any supper, Mr. Director, sir. What? Terrified, Spud shrunk back and gazed at the others. Pippa and Robeet stubbornly stared at the ground, red in the face, and scuffed their feet. Spud could not let that happen. It was his fault they were in this mess in the first place. Mr. Ringmasters, he said firmly, stepping forwards, it's not my friend's fault. I put them up to getting in. They, he went on, his voice shaking, they only wanted to help me find my family. Family? wondered the fat ringmaster. Hang on, interjected the skinny one. Family is terribly important to us circus folk. What? If this is about family, you must explain everything to us in detail. Pine, please bring chairs for these imps, so we don't have to talk about everything standing up, like old ladies at the market. Pine wobbled his way to the dressing rooms, and shortly returned with 3 folding chairs. Meanwhile, the ringmasters sat down into their soft, upholstered armchairs, one of which was round and wide, and the other narrow, with a high backrest. Then they both crossed their legs in sync. Well? Asked the tall one sternly. Spud suddenly didn't know where to begin. So, he stammered. Spud here doesn't have anyone in Larderton, interjected Pippa. Well, no relatives, that is, Spud clarified. We've been through the whole village, but we found nobody except the tomatoes. And they didn't want me. It's not as if they're worth it anyway, spat Pippa disgustedly. That is a tricky situation, declared the tall ringmaster much more peaceably. But I still don't understand how you ended up behind the crates backstage. Then he turned to the circus manager. Mr. Chanel, this looks like it's going to be a long conversation. I think we would all like a splash of hot punch. What? With an offended expression, and muttering discontentedly, the coconut left the room. Pine followed him like a dog. Go on, the skinny ringmaster prompted Spud. So why weren't you sitting in the audience like everyone else? Spud shuddered. We were coming to see you, said Robeet, who couldn't stand the tension any longer. Pips realised that you and Spud are related, so we thought of a plan for getting him to you. Everybody should have somebody, don't you think? He declared, a little heatedly. Is that so? Said the other ringmaster, glowering at Spud. Spud nodded. Then, embarrassed, he explained the whole plan. He may have somewhat neglected to emphasise that the secondary objective of their secret operation was to watch the performance that Robeet and Pippa had been forbidden from going to, and he also decided not to mention Olgoy or his part in the confusion outside the tent, but the ringmasters seemed not to mind this. They sat in their armchairs, nodded their heads, and gazed at Spud searchingly. When he finished, they were silent for a while, then looked at each other briefly, before the pot-bellied one said, The young lady here is right. We are distantly related, something like second cousins. And, as Mr. Director here has said, family is important. Blood is thicker than water. It's a bond stronger than anything else. Rather. I think, brother, that it's high time we introduced ourselves. What? Declared the skinny one. I am Zoltan Paprika, and this is my brother Laszlo. This circus has been run by the Paprika family for 6 generations now. The oldest son always becomes a ringmaster. But, believe it or not, Laszlo and I are twins. We were born at the same time, holding hands. So the family decided that, for the first time in history, Circus Paprika would have 2 ringmasters. What? It's nearly 20 years since we started ringmastering, and I have to say that, so far, it's gone fabulous. Rather. What do you think, Mr. Director, sir? Declared Laszlo, cheerfully winking at his brother. I think you are very right, Mr. Director, sir. Zoltan grinned at him. Then he returned to Spud. So, as you can see, we think family is sacred. What? And what's more, we're circus folk, and circus folk never leave family in the lurch, Laszlo added. That's why we have a proposition for you. Rather. Would you like to join us? Spud was so surprised he couldn't speak. Fortunately, at that moment, Mr. Chanel came into the ringmaster's office carrying mugs of hot punch on a tray. They all looked up and watched as the circus manager carefully placed the clattering mugs onto a round table in front of the ringmaster's chairs. When he left, there was a short pause while they all reached for their mugs, offered each other the sugar bowl, and happily commented on the scent and flavour of the punch. So Spud had a little time to recover his composure. Well then, what's it going to be? Will you join us, what? Asked Zoltan, when they'd all helped themselves. I'd love to, breathed Spud. His nose had gone bright pink. Excellent, said Laszlo, bringing his hands together in a clap. This evening we'll take down the big top and we set off tomorrow at dawn. You'll like it. Our next performance is in the attic of a confectioner's shop. The audience there pay in macaroons and cream puffs. Rather. And many other excellent venues are also scheduled. What? Zoltan continued. When we come back here in a year's time, your friends won't even recognise you. You'll see more of the world in that year than some people do in a lifetime." "A year?" marvelled Spud, and stared at Pippa sheepishly. "Well, of course," she replied seriously. "Wasn't I telling you that they come once a year?" "Certainly," nodded Zoltan. "Circus Paprika is renowned far and wide. We have a great many gigs to get to. Everyone is expecting us." Suddenly all of Spud's joy was gone. That would mean he wouldn't see his friends for a whole year.